This is going to be how we do the first programming assignment that's inside of Pearson. It's the first graded assignment in Chapter 2. So basically, the first thing you want to do is always put your name on top and what the actual assignment is. And then a little bit of a description. This program will calculate the amount of ingredients needed to make a batch of cookies, blah, 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 blah. And this is the solution that the book gives you, which is totally, in my opinion, very difficult if somebody is going to look at this to understand what any of this is. So the very first thing you should always do, and I'm going to show you the easy way to do it, is you want to declare your variables. Now, you really don't need to declare the variables as far as Python's concerned, but this is what you should do. So what we need to do here is we are going to declare some constants. And I'm going to put constants here, assuming I can spell constants. And notice that it takes 1.5 cups of sugar, 1 cup of butter, and 2.75 cups to make 48 cookies. So I'm going to just copy and paste this from my code so I don't have to type it to save time in here. So notice that these are all uppercase separated by an underscore. So then what you want to do is you want to comment it here. And how many cookies in one batch or one normal batch? How much sugar is needed to make one batch? And so on. Same thing, how much butter is needed in here. So now you're looking at these as constants in here. Notice how you have 48, 48, and 48. So it's used 3 times. Well, what happens if, oh, we made a mistake. This is 50. You'd have to go back and change this and change this and change this. But what happens if you missed one in here? So we want to always use constants whenever you can, especially when you have literals in here. So now what we want to do is we want to create our variables. And you're going to list the variables one by one. So I want to put ratio. And what you would do here is you would explain what the ratio is. And we're going to do sugar needed. And we'll go back and do that at the end. Cups butter. And then we're going to do cups flour. And this really should be sugar needed, like so. And then you would comment what all these are for. So that way when you're looking at things, and I'm going to hold off on the ratio so you can see what I'm talking about when I actually create it. And it's important. Now, Python could care less about this. But when you go and look at something, or you look at somebody else's code, or you look at your own code 6 months down the road, then you say, oh, what is this? What am I doing here? Now, what does this sugar needed mean? And all that other stuff. So notice that we have what the actual sugar needed is for one batch, butter needed, and in here. And notice the difference between the two. One is all uppercase with an underscore, and these are all lowercase except for the second word, and no underscore. So the first thing I want to do is I want to ask the user, how many cookies do we need? So we also should have num cookies here. And this would be the number of cookies user wants to make. So now what we want to do here is we can't do the ratio until we get the number of cookies. So you're going to type in num cookies. and then we're going to do input. But what we need is we need an integer, because we need to have a even number. You're not going to make 47 and a half cookies. You're going to make 50 cookies, or you should anyway. You might have in here. So then we're going to go in, and I don't know how this happened, but it did. So then what we need is our input. And what we want to do here is, what are we going to input? What are we going to do? So we need to put our string in here, and it says, how many cookies would you like to make? Notice the question mark and notice the space in here. So let's just run this, and we're going to print num cookies. And I always like to do this because that lets me know right off the bat if I have an error. So let's run this, and I'll put in, say, 50, and then we'll do, see what we get in here. So how many cookies? We'll just do 75. All right, so now we have good input. So now what we need our ratio. So let's think of it in simple terms. So we have 48 cookies. But if we have 48 cookies, then basically our ratio is going to be 1 to 1 or just 1. If we had 96 cookies, would you all agree with me, hopefully, that we would need twice as many? So that's where our ratio comes from. We want to determine what are we going to multiply by in order to do it. So if we want 96 cookies, then our ratio is going to be 2. So we're going to need to multiply the cups of sugar needed by 2, and butter needed by 2, and flour needed by 2 to determine how many cookies we're actually going to make in there and what we need for each one. So now we have the ratio. So let's go and put our ratio is nothing more than the number of cookies divided by how many cookies are in one batch. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to print out ratio. And we'll do it twice. Once we'll do it with 96, and once we'll do it with 48. So I claim the 96 should be 2, and the 48 should be 1. That's what I claim. And let's go and start off with 96. So, okay, so we have 96 and we have 2. Now, why is it displaying 2.0 and not just 2? And the answer is very simple. Because when you're doing with the 1/, it performs float division in here. So it gives you a float. So it's just going to do it this way. If you only wanted it to display it as 1, you'd have to do the formatted print to a D. So now let's do a one which is 48.
Professor, can you back up for 1 second, please? There was something you just said that you broke up when you said it.
Okay, we are back after a short pause. So I've commented out the print so we don't have to see our num cookies and ratio every single time. So we have our ratio. So let's start out here. If we are only making 48 cookies, we should expect that the sugar needed should be 1.5 cups in here. So what we want to do here is we want to type in sugar needed. And that's the wrong sugar needed. And it's not there because we haven't declared it yet. I'm so used to C++. So be careful about that. So we want sugar needed equals, it's going to be sugar needed times the ratio. and everything else is going to be exactly like that. So if the ratio is 1, we're making one batch of cookies, it's going to be 1.5, which is here, times 1. So we're going to do the same exact thing for the butter. So we're going to do cups butter equals butter needed times the ratio. And then we're going to do flour needed equals flour needed times ratio. Okay. So now we have our ratio set, how much we should have. So if we do this, if we do it with 1, we should get 48 cookies. We should get 1.5, 1, and 275. If we do it with more than 48, we're going to get a different thing. So I'm going to just copy this, and then that way I don't have to worry about spelling mistakes in here. So let's look at this in here. So obviously cups flour is wrong, so it needs to be flour needed. So we're doing print. We're starting, the F means format. So we're physically typing in you need, and then a space, and then sugar needed, which is this, and how many cups of sugar. Then I put a comma and a new line. So then how many cups of butter, and a new line in here, flour needed, cups of flour. So now you may need to make the decision, do we want to format it? So let's go and take a look at what we actually have in here. So we'll start off with 48, then we'll do 96, and then we'll do an odd amount where let's see what we actually get printed. So let's start off with 48 and 1.5, 1, and 275. So that worked out good. Let's go and do 96 this time. And that should be double. So 3.0, 2, and 5.5. But now let's do one where it's an oddball amount. Let's try, say, 125 cookies. So now we want to do our formatting. This kind of looks a little bit challenging in here. So we can, obviously it's going to be challenging to say I need 3.90 cups of sugar, but let's just format it to 1 decimal place. So what you would do here, all you need here is a colon and then 1 F, and then a colon and 1 F, and then a colon and 1 F. So let's see if that works, and if not, we will make an adjustment. So let's do 125 again, and we have an issue in here. Look what's going on here. 15, oh, because I put 15, not 125. Let's try that again. So let's try one more time. So we need 3 point. So now we have an issue. We have a formatting issue. So I'm going to put the program on pause, and I want to see if anybody can figure out what it is. So let's go back and now finish the formatting. Because we're actually doing 1 decimal point, we need to put a dot, we need to put a dot, and we need to put a dot. If you don't do that, it's going to take this as a size of 1, but it's going to expand. If you put a size of 5 and you have 10 characters, it's still going to print all 10. So let's go and run this again. And we'll try 125. And now we have it in here. So that is good. So if we wanted to put a size in, you would need to have the size here. So the reason for the dot is if I wanted to do it in 10 places, and meaning a width of 10, how would it know how many decimal places? It would think we want to do a width of 101. So that's this thing in here. So let's go back and take a look at what we did. We declared constants. So now this is good. Well, all of a sudden say, well, you know what? I want it a little bit sweeter. So let's make it 1.75 cups of sugar. Well, then I don't need to go back and change anything here at all. I just have it here. I just need to change it once. Same thing with butter. Same thing with flour. And that's all you need to do it. And then notice that we have declared our variables. And all you would need to do is put in what is the purpose of each one of these variables in here. So this is good. And then the fprint is we're putting the variable inside of brackets. We're doing our colon. And the dot means, okay, this is how many decimal places. This is how many decimal places. And this is how many decimal places. And that is it for this one right here. So hopefully it helps.